Your air conditioner is running right now. In Lancaster County, inside a stone spring house built before electric lines arrived, the same heat is being handled by water, shade, and moving air. No compressor, no service call. Your vents keep cycling. In southeastern Pennsylvania, a banked farmhouse wall stays cool because part of the house sits in earth. That never panics when July does. No motor, no monthly bill. You keep buying colder air. That older system keeps borrowing the same physics your own skin uses every time sweat evaporates. No noise, no argument. Your utility bill shows up on paper. That older method leaves no invoice at the mailbox. Your condenser throws hot air back outside all afternoon. A shaded wall, wet cloth, and an escape path for heat do their work. So quietly you can miss it if you are trained to notice only machinery. One system announces itself. One system disappears into the house. The gap between those two systems is not technology. It is not innovation. It is a decision you can trace through standards, sales copy, and sealed windows. Here is that decision. I am going to show you how a room can drop 15 degrees with cloth, water, shade, and pressure difference. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. You live in a city, and you have never done this before. Stay with me. Because what I found in Lancaster County uses the same physics the Persians used to cool desert rooms more than 2,000 years ago. The science is brutally simple. The United States Department of Energy says evaporative coolers reduce air temperature by 15 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit before that air enters a home. I want you to hold that number, 15 to 40, because everything else starts there. If you have ever stood under a shaded porch after crossing hot concrete, you have already felt the first half of the mechanism. Radiation stopped hitting your skin, so your body stopped gaining heat as fast. If you then felt a damp breeze, you felt the second half. Evaporation took heat away. Comfort changed before the thermometer finished catching up. You already know the mechanism. Your body teaches it to you every summer. Sweat leaves your skin, changes phase, and steals heat as it goes. A wetted, cooling cloth does the same thing for air. Water evaporates, heat gets carried away. The air that reaches you arrives colder. Then pressure takes over. The Department of Energy also says natural ventilation relies on wind and the stack effect, the same chimney effect that pulls warm air upward and out. So you do not need a fan to move cooled air. If you give warm air one high exit and cool air one lower entry, you only need a temperature difference, an opening, and gravity. That is it. The analogy is your car radiator in reverse. A radiator throws heat into moving air. This setup pulls heat out of moving air with water and a cool surface. Same exchange, different direction. The Pacific Northwest National Laboratory's Building America Solution Center adds the missing piece you rarely hear about. Passive cooling does not mean one trick. It means stacking cool outside air, evaporation, the ground, shading, and night flushing so each small effect reinforces the next one. That matters because your room does not overheat from one cause. It overheats from solar gain, trapped hot air, warm surfaces, and bad timing. Fix those together, and the result feels larger than the parts. If you want a field metric, call it an equivalent coefficient of performance. DOE says evaporative cooling can use about 1/4 of the energy of central air. That is 4 units of cooling effect for every 1 unit of electrical input, in the conventional comparison against 1 full unit from the standard baseline. And in the setup I am showing you, the electrical input is 0. That gap represents a massive market in equipment, refrigerants, maintenance, and replacement every year. And that is why you have never heard of this. I felt that gap in my own body in Lancaster County. I walked into a stone outbuilding after noon, and the sound changed first. No compressor hum, no vent rush, no shudder from a condenser outside. I heard water. I heard one bee. I heard nothing else. Then I felt the temperature. My arms cooled before my eyes adjusted. The floor held it. The stone held it. The shaded air felt dense and deliberate, as if the room had decided heat was not welcome there. I asked a farmer named Jacob why the place still works so well. He smiled once and told me, "You keep the sun off, the water moving, and the hot air leaving." That was the whole lesson. No jargon, no patent, just practice. Then he pointed to the building itself. The wall thickness mattered. The shade line mattered. The way the door opened into cooler air mattered. Nothing there was decorative. Every piece was either slowing heat, storing coolness, or moving warm air somewhere else. Once you see that, old farm buildings stop looking primitive. They start looking ruthless. He told me his people had used the same logic for 4 generations. The building tradition came through Pennsylvania German lines rooted in the Palatinate and Canton burn, then kept alive because it solved a real problem. The Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission says spring houses in the Lancaster Plain supported home dairying and played an essential role in preserving food, and its Lancaster Plain record covers 1730 to 1960. The record never disappeared. It was filed away. It was waiting. If you go back far enough, you find the same answer repeating. In Yazd, you can still see Persian wind catchers above the roofs. BBC Future described how those towers pull air downward and sometimes send it across subterranean water for further cooling. At Daulatabad Garden, one wind catcher still rises 33 meters, or 108 feet, above the ground. Same principle: catch air, cool it, move heat out. If you turn toward Rome, you find the mirror image in winter control and thermal mass. Britannica describes the Roman Hippocaust as an open space under a floor heated by air from a furnace. The support piers stood about 8 inches square and about 2 feet apart. Different season, same obsession, control air, store temperature in mass. Keep people comfortable without pretending nature does not matter. If you turn toward Korea, Asia Society says Ondol floor heating dates back to at least the Bronze Age, with smoke channels angled under stone and brick floors so heat stayed longer after the fire died. Again, you are looking at mass, flow, and delayed temperature change. People discovered the rule long before modern brands arrived. And if you look at Egypt through the Persian record, you find wind-catching structures reaching back about 3,300 years. Different materials, different climate, same answer: catch moving air high, cool it with mass or water, and let hotter air leave. Every civilization that mastered extreme conditions arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from the Palatinate and Canton burn to Pennsylvania more than 260 years ago, and kept building it because it worked and because they never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Now we get to the part that should make you angry. In 1902, you can watch Willis Carrier launch modern air conditioning at the Sackett and Wilhelms printing plant in Brooklyn. By 1930, Carrier was selling Weathermaster units into office towers and even the United States Supreme Court. That new market did not just create comfort, it created an industry that needed you to believe comfort only came from compressors, ducts, and paid service. The alternative threatened every dollar tied to sealed buildings and purchased cooling. It threatened window units. It threatened refrigerants. It threatened replacement cycles. It threatened a future worth billions. Once comfort becomes a product, simplicity becomes a threat. A room that stays cooler because you blocked sun and used evaporation does not generate recurring revenue. A family that learns pressure difference and thermal mass does not need a service contract to understand July. That is the real conflict. The mechanism was not one dramatic ban, it was cleaner than that. Penn State's History of Ventilation says ASHVE adopted a minimum fresh air rate of 30 cubic feet per minute per occupant in 1895 and pushed a proposed model law in 1914. By 1925, 22 states had adopted that requirement. Natural window ventilation became framed as unreliable, noisy, dirty, and old. Mechanical ventilation became the favored answer. Then full air conditioning finished the cultural job. ASHRAE's own history says the expansion of air conditioning in the 1930s made natural ventilation obsolete in commercial design. Read that again. Not because the old physics stopped working, because the profession reorganized around machines. You can see the sentence made concrete after the war. ASHRAE's office history says the Equitable Building, later called the Commonwealth Building. It used air conditioning to counteract heat gain from large sealed windows without blinds or shading. Leverhouse followed in 1952 with sealed windows on all four sides. The building did not adapt to climate. Climate had to be purchased back. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you efficiency by the ton. You can even watch the sales campaign expand in real time. The Smithsonian Institution Archives shows a 1944 Life magazine ad promising people they could cheat the atmospheric whims of Mother Nature with packaged air. It also documents a 1945 Life article demonstrating a carrier unit with 500 watts of bulbs to mimic indoor heat. Media sold the dream. Standards normalized the hardware. Industry collected the invoice. That sentence matters more than it first appears. Cheat nature, not work with it, not redirect it, not design around it, cheat it. The sales language told you exactly what kind of house the industry wanted: sealed, dependent, and permanently hungry for purchase correction. Once that idea wins, a shaded opening and a wetted cloth start sounding unsophisticated even when the physics stays perfect. If you want named allies, look at the alignment. Carrier built the machines and made comfort a product. ASHVE, later ASHRAE, supplied the professional language that favored mechanical systems. Life magazine and national ad campaigns sold that future into the American home, right down to babies, bedrooms, and dusting time. Then General Motors and DuPont entered the refrigerant business through kinetic chemicals in 1930 and made the chemical layer profitable too. Equipment, standards, and persuasion moved together because every piece reinforced the next one. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, building habits, and ordinary home practice. Not because it failed, because it was not profitable. And the continuation is not ancient history. Open Secrets shows the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute spent $964,622 lobbying in 2022. At the same time, code bodies, federal rules, and state energy debates kept centering purchased equipment. Follow the money and the pattern stays the same. The U.S. HVAC market was valued at $27.85 billion in 2022. Every room you cool with water, shade, and pressure difference is equipment that never gets sold, serviced, refilled, and replaced. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people with land, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to buy equipment. You need a window, a yard, and one weekend. And if you rent, the logic still helps. You can hang this on removable hardware, use a freestanding trough, and take the whole setup down at night. What matters is not ownership. What matters is access to one opening, one shaded side, and air that still knows how to move. Here is the build. I want you to pick the shadiest window in the room first. Ideally a north or east opening that measures about 30 to 36 inches wide and 48 to 72 inches tall. If the only available window faces west, you can still use it, but you must block direct sun on the outside first. A 48-inch by 72-inch sheet of low-E radiant foil or even a reflective exterior shade cuts the heat load. Before the air reaches your cooling cloth, that part matters. Now hang a double layer of unbleached muslin cotton or linen, so it covers the full opening with a 1-inch overlap on each side. I use a 3/4-inch hardwood dowel across the top and 2 brass cup hooks in the trim. Let the bottom 2 inches dip into a narrow water trough. A 24-inch stainless steel hotel pan works. So does a slim HDPE planter box. You want 3 to 4 inches of water depth, no more. because shallow water wets faster and stays cleaner. Then crack a higher window on the opposite side of the house 1.5 to 2 inches. If you have only one room, crack the same window at the top by 1 inch and open the door into a warmer hallway. You are creating path, not force. Hot air must have somewhere higher to go. Before the hottest hour, soak the cloth fully. For a standard 36 by 60 inch panel, you will use about 1.8 to 2.4 liters of water on the first wetting. After that, capillary action does the rest. I add 2 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide to the trough every 3 days to slow slime, and I wash the cloth once a week. Muslin cotton is not optional. Polyester causes beading, weak evaporation, and disappointing temperature drop. If your window screen is filthy, clean it first. If the trim leaks hard afternoon sun, tape the foil shade outside the glass, not inside, because you want radiation stopped before it enters the room. If you have blinds, keep them raised behind the cloth so air can move across the full surface. And if you have a ceiling above 8 feet, open the higher outlet a little more, because the hottest air will be gathering there first. If you want more output, place 1 fired clay or terracotta tile about 12 inches by 12 inches behind the cloth on the indoor sill and keep it damp. That adds surface area and a little thermal mass. If your sill is deep, a second tile helps. If the window is wider than 36 inches, use 2 cloth panels with a 2-inch overlap in the middle. Never 1 sagging sheet. The cost stays low. Muslin runs $7 to $14 a yard. A planter or hotel pan runs $9 to $28. Hydrogen peroxide costs $1 to $3. A dowel, hooks, and clips run $6 to $18. Reflective shade material adds $18 to $46. Even with spare cloth and a second pan, you land around $41 to $109 total. It takes 40 minutes the first time and under 3 minutes to set each day after that. If you want a cleaner look, sew a simple sleeve at the top and bottom, and slide the dowel through the upper sleeve while a 3/8 inch wooden strip weights the lower one. If you want portability, use spring clamps instead of hooks, and keep the trough on a narrow shelf or crate. If you want one more gain, pre-cool the water in the trough overnight and set the panel at sunrise before the room stores its daytime heat. Small choices add up. Use the room like the system was designed to win. At sunrise, close the windows that face direct sun and leave only the shaded intake and the higher exhaust path. By late morning, touch the wall nearest the glass. If it feels warm, you still have radiant gain getting through, and you need more exterior shade, not more water. Around noon, re-wet the cloth until the lower edge darkens evenly from side to side. That usually takes 0.6 to 1.1 liters. If one strip stays pale, your fabric is hanging too tight. Loosen it. Air needs texture and contact. You can scale the idea without changing the principle. For a 120 square foot bedroom, one 30-inch by 60-inch panel is enough. For a 180 square foot living room, use 2 36-inch by 72-inch panels on separate openings, and keep the exit path wider, closer to 3 square feet total. If your floor is tile or concrete, let night air cool it after sunset and start the cloth again the next afternoon. If your floor is carpeted wood, focus harder on blocking sun because you have less mass storing coolness. Same method, different emphasis, and remember this: comfort is not one number on a thermostat. Moving shaded air at 78 degrees can feel better than stagnant indoor air at 74. The Department of Energy's own guidance on natural ventilation and evaporative cooling makes that obvious once you read it closely. You are not buying a laboratory. You are building relief, fast, cheap, quiet relief that works because heat follows rules whether industries like it or not. If you want one last gain, cool the room at night before you sleep. Open the high outlet to 3 inches, open the shaded intake fully, and let the house dump stored heat until dawn. Then close the sun-facing sides early. You are borrowing cool hours instead of fighting expensive hot ones in summer. That shift alone changes everything. On a 95-degree day, with outdoor relative humidity low and the shaded window doing its job, you can feel it. A 12 to 15-degree drop in the incoming airstream and a room shift that reaches comfort fast. Not because the room became refrigerated, because the hottest air stopped owning the room. That is the difference. Maintenance is nothing dramatic. Rinse the trough every 3 days. Wash the cloth once a week. Replace the cloth once a season if your water is hard, or every 2 seasons if it is clean. If you use a planter, scrub the corners. If you use a steel pan, dry it between heat waves. Your conventional system costs $5,900 to $12,400 to install, $118 to $286 a month to run in heavy summer use, and lasts 12 to 18 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $41 to $109 total. It lasts 5 to 10 seasons for the fabric and decades for the hardware. Your choice. Everything I have covered across this channel, root cellar cooling, lime wash walls, and gravity water storage, I have put in one place, step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order families actually use it. The link is in the description, but stay here, because what Jacob kept repeating is the part nobody is talking about yet. He kept saying the same thing in different words. You do not fight heat with a louder machine first. You stop feeding it, you block radiation, you give hot air a higher exit, you give water a surface, you let temperature move where it already wants to move. That is why this feels bigger than one room hack. Once you understand the pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. You notice why summer kitchens sat apart from the main house. You notice why banked basements stayed useful. You notice why shaded porches, awnings, trees, lime wash, and thick curtains kept showing up long before glossy thermostats did. Old houses were full of decisions that reduced heat before anyone tried to erase it with horsepower. The Persians did not read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. The Amish did not need a white paper to keep a milk room cool. They paid attention to stone, shade, water, and afternoon sun. That knowledge never disappeared. It was written out of the manual. It was waiting. If you are the kind of person who believes real knowledge gets pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who decided they are done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state, your July electric bill, and the oldest cooling trick your family still remembers in the comments. I read every single one, and your answers decide what I cover next. Next week, I am going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals about keeping food, medicine, and seed stock cold without a compressor. The technique uses nothing but clay, shade, and moving water. And the record-proving institutions knew the principle generations before, selling you the modern substitute. You are not going to want to miss that one.